Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Influential Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Duncan, and as a mom and lawyer, I want to be a cheerleader for moms who don't want to give up their own goals and dreams. Around here, we celebrate moms who are making a difference and talk about ways to juggle work, motherhood, goals, faith, self-care, and more. I'm so glad you're here. The only filters we use around here are coffee filters, so pour yourself a cup and enjoy the show. On today's episode of Influential Motherhood, I'm here with Alyssa Daniel, who is now a dermatologist in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so Alyssa is going to tell us about what it's like being a working mom, having her own medical practice, and talk to us about skincare and safe beauty and the beauty industry. And so I'm really excited to talk with you, Dr. Daniel.
Well, thank you for having me, Melissa.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So Alyssa and I cheered together in middle school, and we were just chatting about how it feels like 100 years ago, and yet it feels like 2 seconds ago.
Absolutely.
And for the record, she looks exactly the same.
No, I don't know about that.
The beauty that you see in the pictures associated with this.
Thank you very much, and you look great yourself.
Episode are just as she looked at the age of 13. So, Alyssa, you now have 2 kids, and as I said, you have your own practice in Charlotte. So, take us back before we start talking about skincare and motherhood and work, and tell us a little bit about you and your work and your family, and then we'll kind of get into the rest of it.
So a little bit about me. So I was originally born in the DC area. My mom's actually one of the very few Charlotte natives. And so in middle school, actually right around the time I met you, Melissa, I actually moved back to Charlotte from the DC area and did middle school and high school here in Charlotte. And then went on to college at Chapel Hill and did my undergrad and medical school at Chapel Hill. And did my residency training both in Charlotte and my dermatology training at Wake Forest. So kind of been through lots of schooling all around the North Carolina area. And then, of course, after graduation of my residency program, came and settled back here in Charlotte. And I first joined a multi-specialty group practice with one of the larger healthcare systems here in Charlotte. And, had a good experience there, just wasn't an ultimate fit, and decided pretty shortly after I joined that I ultimately had a goal to start my own practice. And at that time I had my first child as a chief resident at Wake Forest. And so she was she was about 10 months old at the time. And when we made our move back to Charlotte. So of course it was just very daunting to even think about with a young child of, where in the world do you start a practice with that? And so, I was at that practice. I was in a multi-specialty group practice, and ultimately some things happened in the practice that, I think the goal and the trajectory of the practice that I was in under this large healthcare network kind of changed. And ultimately, a lot of those providers ended up starting their own practice. And for myself, I just envisioned something different. So kind of broke off, and that kind of started the beginning stages of me thinking about what became my new practice, which is Remedy Skin, Hair, and Wellness. And so, I took about 1.5 years to plan what I wanted that to look like. And ultimately, medicine for me just became one of those things where I just really wanted a personal relationship with my patients. I didn't want to feel like I was shuffling through the day and just seeing numbers and not making the connection with people. And so ultimately, that's why I named it Remedy. It was kind of the remedy for where I felt in my life was kind of missing from a provider-patient standpoint. So,
that's
incredible. And so it's been open for about 1 year. I really became very interested in lifestyle and dietary influences overall in healthcare, especially in the dermatology realm, where I deal with a lot of chronic diseases, inflammatory conditions, and just learning more and more about that aspect of medicine as well.
That's great. I love this. So when you went into medical school, did you know then that you wanted to go into dermatology?
No, believe it or not. It's kind of funny. So I always say I kind of stumbled upon medicine because my dad is a physician, and I was one of there's five of us total, and I was probably the only one that said early on that there was no way I was ever going to medical school, and I was always really good at science and math, and I loved science and math, and so I think it was just like a natural progression for me, and so I had a couple mentors in my life. One of them who was a cousin, and she went to med school 4 years before me, and she's like, I know, you'll be really good at this. And I actually started shadowing at Chapel Hill in the emergency room and the pediatric neurology floor, and I fell in love with it then. And so I was one of the late bloomers. I didn't decide until my junior year, and kind of did a whole major change at that point
Oh,
at
wow.
Chapel Hill, and finished my pre-med requirements, and then applied to med school. So I didn't always want to be a doctor, even though
Yeah.
I think in my soul I was always kind of that healing and nurturing type. So I think naturally it just it fit very well. But yeah, so it wasn't a dream of mine early on, but once I got into medicine, it was, I think I found that perfect fit, and now it's just like making it my own.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So did any of your other siblings become doctors also?
No. So
No,
it's
you
actually,
don't.
I am the only one. So it's actually really funny. My youngest brother, who is the fifth child, he's the one that's like, since he was born, said that he wanted to be a doctor. And I actually think he's 4 years younger than I am. And he was at pre-med at the University of South Carolina at the time. And then he saw me during my intern year. And I actually think that's what derailed his dream.
He's like, never mind.
He's like, never mind, I'm not doing that. So he
That's
actually
really
got
funny.
into kind of the banking world, and he's done really well. And so he never came back to medicine, unfortunately, but he would have been a really good doctor too.
Well, you took one for the team, I guess.
I did.
That's really funny. So you mentioned that you said your oldest was born when you were a chief resident. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So that's funny that you say that, because actually one of the things I wanted to ask you about was that I often hear women who are in medical school, which I, in my kind of layman's, terms, would include residency. I don't know if that, so.
It's in their training, absolutely, yes.
Yes. So in their training, who have their babies during that time. And, I just put myself back in law school, and I think,
How in the world?
like that, how in the world? And B, that seems really stressful and exhausting.
It was one of those things. So my husband and I met actually as college freshmen, and we started dating very shortly after that. So, we've been dating for a long time. We got married my last year of medical school. And so, it's one of those things that, family planning does take a little bit of a backseat to your career. And it, once you've been married for several years, and you're thinking to yourself, like, all my friends are having babies, and I always, and I think that was the biggest reason why I did not want to be a doctor early on, was because I always dreamed of myself first as a mother. And I felt like that was something that was kind of an intangible dream if you also were heavy hitting in a career. And, that's the young self thinking, and, understanding from my father being a physician how demanding that job was. I just didn't think that you could be great at both of them. And so it took a lot of mentorship on my part to find powerful women leaders who are also very fabulous mothers as well, to show me that you could, it takes work on both sides, but you can be a great mom, and you can have a great career as well. So, during during my second year of residency, I just had that feeling that I wanted a child, and I felt like I'd put my life and on that aspect on hold for so long that, that was something I was going to do for myself. And, we thought about it, and I don't think it was ever going to be perfect timing, because the next year it's like, well, I'm going to start my new big girl job. Like, is that the best time to take maternity leave either? So I ended up, actually having her right after the beginning of my chief residency year. And fortunately, I was allowed to share the chief residency with another third year who had also recently had a child. So I think that was, something new that the program did. They usually only choose one chief resident, and we got to share it, which was, I think, very helpful for both of us.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience. It taught me that, nothing's perfect, and you make it work. And she came out, and she's a fabulous little girl and great baby. I laugh about it, because she kind of came out of the womb as this self-confident and very like reassured person. And I say, thank gosh that, the powers that be, the good Lord gave me a child that was just she was an easy baby because,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you think about it, she probably started sleeping through the night around 4 or 5 weeks,
Oh, that's awesome.
which was
And you
easy for
needed
me.
that.
Right, I needed that. So I'm like in the middle of chief residency. I'm planning all these schedules, and I'm planning didactics and curriculums and all this for the first and second year residents. So it was definitely something I really needed. But I think lots of residents and medical students go through that time in life, and it's not easy, but we make it work and we come out on the other side. And I think we're all better people because of it. And our children end up fine. So we're good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome. I always have so much respect because, like I said, I've heard a lot of women, that's been part of their story. And I just have so much respect for what I know or I would assume are the sacrifices,
oh, absolutely.
that go into
Well,
that.
and I tell people all the time, it was a crazy time. I went back, actually worked through the beginning stages of my labor because I got exactly 6 weeks off.
Okay.
And I went into early labor, and I mean, early in the sense of like, it wasn't active labor. She was full
Okay.
term and ready to come, but
Yeah.
I wasn't like about to deliver. So
Hmm.
I took one for the team. I went to clinic and I was working, and they're looking at me like I'm out of my mind. They're like, are you really in clinic having contractions? And I'm like, well, if I take it off now, I don't get it
You
off
don't
the
get it
back
back.
end. Right. So I worked until like the last possible second. My husband finally called me. He's like, you need to come home. We packed our bags and I went to the hospital and we had a baby.
That is so
So,
funny.
and then, but again, I had to go back and she was less than 6 weeks old because I was in labor for about 23 hours. So it was like
Okay.
it was a day shy. So she was like 5 weeks, 6 days old when I went back.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was horrible because who do you leave your 5 week old child with, and
Yeah.
go to work for like, the full, 7 o'clock until 6 o'clock p.m. So it came a lot on my family. My mom drove up and she would keep her for me for 3 days of the week. I found a family friend who could nanny for her 2 days of the week. So we pieced it together. We made it
Hmm.
work. She ended up fine. We're good. But it was hard.
Wow.
It is definitely hard.
Yeah, that's incredible, and it sounds like your family really stepped up,
Oh,
and it
absolutely.
takes a village for sure.
It does. Absolutely.
So you mentioned that you were able to find some women who were mentors to you,
Yes.
and that was what kind of helped you realize that like we said, there's never really a perfect time to kind of pardon this interruption for a baby,
Right.
and so what did that look like? What did those mentor opportunities and how did you find them, and what was it about those relationships that really kind of helped you cross that bridge for yourself?
So I'd say the first, I think, really influential mentor was one of my dad's medical school friends. They
Hmm.
went to medical school together, and she was a pediatrician, I believe, and she had had 5 children, some of
Okay.
those in medical school and residency. And so, again, kind of that very immature, naive me thinking, oh, you can't have it both ways. You either are a
Hmm.
mother or you are a professional. And she really kind of showed me like you can make your own schedule. That was the first person that told me, hey, you don't have to work 6 days a week. You can work
Yeah.
4 days a week or 3 days a week. You make it work for yourself and make it so that you feel fulfilled on both aspects, and it can happen. So that, I think, was my first initial push of like, oh, okay, well, I can go to medical school. And then, like I said, it was just key people throughout. So then, like, one of the second ones was I say, professional mentor, who really encouraged me into dermatology, which was Dr. Amy McMichael, who's now the chair of the department at Wake Forest. And I went and spent a summer with her as a medical student, and I saw her, this very powerful woman who, seemingly everything had it together, super
Hmm.
smart, great career. And she had 2 children who were fabulous. So, again, seeing this other very influential woman who seemingly had both ways and did really well with it. And then, also just seeing friends. So, I think it's always easy to see someone who's older than you, who's kind
Right.
of arrived at that moment, and you think to yourself, well, I'm so far away from that. I'm so far removed. And once I got into residency, just seeing people who were, only 3 years older than me who made it work. I think that just it makes it a little more tangible that it's not like, someone who is 10 years your senior and has all these other accolades that you don't have, who's made it to that point.
Yeah.
So, and it's been like that since then. I feel like every stage of my life, I find someone who I'm like, okay, they made it work and I can do it too.
Yeah, that's great. Have you had the opportunity to kind of turn around and mentor anyone who's come behind you?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of, I would say, medicine was my first passion in life. And just, I love science. I love how the body works, and healing. And then I say my second passion actually really became teaching. And ultimately, if I could, at the end of my career, combine any two parts of that, is being able to teach medicine and teach healing to people, would really be my personal passion. So when I first started my big girl job, as I say, once I finished my residency, I actually had residents that came and rotated through me. And a lot of those were, I'd say younger women, in the sense that they were, still training, who, were in different stages of their life. Some of them were still single, some of them were married, and thinking about family and children. And even now I have, like over the summer, I had a few students, college students, who mentored with me. And again, just teaching them that there's no one way to do this. It's kind of, you make it what you would like it to be, and you are a better person because of it. And I think, especially from a provider standpoint, patients feel that as well.
Yeah.
So it becomes a more therapeutic relationship regardless.
Oh, that's great. Well, it sounds like you are living kind of your goals, and
I'm making it work every day.
I love it. I love it. I'm sure, I know it's not easy, but you make it sound easy. So, but I know that it's not actually easy. But
no. There's personal struggles every single day, single day. But you do the best that you got, and you give it all you got, and it ends up fine.
Yeah. What's been the hardest part for you in parenting, the combination of parenting and work?
I think the hardest part for me is I feel like I lived a very good life and a very privileged life, in the sense that I had, two parents household. My mom actually stayed home with us for most of my younger years. She, worked up until she had three of us, and then after that she kind of stayed home and was kind of the homemaker mother, and really like an educator. She was always at school with us. Anything we needed and we wanted to do, she was just kind of always there. And so I always imagined like that would be how I was as a mother too, and that was kind of like my life goal. But of course, when you're a professional, that doesn't always work out to be the same. So sometimes it's just that comparison of like, well, I had this and my children aren't going to have that. And maybe it made me a better person because I had all of this. So I think it's just kind of settling those differences with myself. And honestly, I think it's probably more of my issue than, really a family issue, or my children needing or wanting more than what we have right now. But I think we all kind of come with those personal biases of what we had in life that we really liked or we didn't like, and having that impact our wants and goals for our own family.
Yeah, I can relate to that. My mom stayed home too, and so I sometimes, like you said, just compare what I'm able to kind of do, in terms of, I look back and it's like, I came home from school when I didn't have extracurriculars and did my homework and then played. And of course we're like, running
flying
in the door
everywhere.
at like 6:30 and,
throwing stuff in the oven and it's like, eat.
I'm like practically like yelling at my children to eat,
eat. That's
it.
That is it every single day.
All right. So let's talk skincare, because that is your area of expertise.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of the moms listening are completely here for whatever you have to tell us in terms of what we can do. So I guess our starting point that I'm thinking is moms are busy. We just talked about flying in the door at 6:30. So
exactly.
I feel like if I walked into your office, I would say, Alyssa, I have the capacity for maybe 2 or 3 more things to do when it comes to my skin. So if I walked in and said that to you, what would you say to me should be my top priorities in terms of taking care of my skin at age 35?
Okay. So I think the most important thing is to understand, if our goal is to slow down the signs of time, would be, what are the things that age us the most? So stress, poor nutrition.
Check.
I was gonna say stress. Like, we can learn mindfulness and how to, yeah, compose ourselves and do yoga, but realistically, a lot of us don't have time to do all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think we have to figure out whatever our stress coping mechanisms are, or really, if you don't have any idea, then investigate that part of, is it yoga, or is it just finding some of these apps that are really cool out right now that you can practice mindfulness, or you can do deep breathing exercises, because that really doesn't take much extra time or money.
Yep.
So I think sun exposure is probably the even more than stress, probably the biggest issue.
Mm-hmm.
So making sure that we are protecting ourselves as adequately as possible. So I am a big advocate of a daily sunscreen, at least on the face, the neck, and then taking it down for women down to the V shape of the chest, just because most of us have our chest exposed so often.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's a
backs of
good
arms
point.
and hands. I've been telling the ladies that more and more, because I get so many complaints over the age of 50 of, how do I get these brown spots off of my hand? And so then it's,
Mm-hmm.
we're on the reactive instead of being proactive at that point.
Right.
So, even just getting a daily sun protectant on the backs of the arms and hands, I think goes a long way. And then just thinking about the fact that sunscreen doesn't do it all. I mean, it's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So when we can do other things to protect, I'm a big fan of an advocate for the sun safety clothing that they're making now. So do you have to wear the little teeny tiny bikinis, or can you wear something that has a little, extra shade for your body? The rash guards are great. Or getting a sun protective cover up that if you're not in the water, and you can wear your big floppy hat and sun protective clothing.
Yeah.
Um, so I'd say those two are the biggest kind of preventative, and of course nutrition. I mean, I'm big into how does what we eat affect our body,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think we talk about that enough from an anti-aging standpoint. It's just eating a broad spectrum of rich and nutritious foods, and how long that goes for us in terms of getting the nutrients, especially what we call those phytonutrients out of them, which are huge antioxidants. As we know,
Mm-hmm.
the sunshine damages us from usually oxidation, so the antioxidants are great for that. Now, the really practical things that you can do in terms of products and things you can get over the counter or from stores, I try to make it for my moms. They usually tell me I got like 3 extra minutes. Like, what can I really do for 3 minutes and
Yeah.
really change?
Yeah.
If you give people 10 extra things to slather on their skin, it's realistically not going to happen
Right.
for most of us. So I usually say, from a key product standpoint, a retinol and a vitamin C are usually the two biggest bangs for your bucks. They're usually easy to find. You don't need a prescription necessarily for either of those. You can get generic retinols over the counter. Now, of course, if you're looking for a full strength prescription retinoid, you do have to get that usually from a physician, or sometimes med spas have a provider that has prescribing abilities, and you can get that from them. But most patients can start, or most people can start with over the counter versions of just retinols and a vitamin C serum. I don't have any links or ties to this company, but a lot of my patients, I do recommend, if they're looking for really inexpensive products, the
Mm-hmm.
Ordinary is a great line
Okay.
to start with. I think they're pretty conscious about what they put into their products, which is really important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And they really do make a play on some of the more expensive product lines and things that they offer. So they do have a retinol serum, and they do have a vitamin C serum, which most people that have used it are pretty happy with. And I think they have quality ingredients. So I think that's a good go-to if you're just looking for something quick and easy, and you're not going to be making a huge investment into.
Yeah.
And putting that on before you go to bed at night. Um, I think those are probably pretty practical things that you can do that's not going to add a huge amount of time to your already very busy regimen. So, morning, putting on, wash your face and put on a sunscreen. That's
Mm-hmm.
great. In the evening, wash your face and put on a retinol or a vitamin C, or a combination of the two. Um, and I think that's a good starting point for sure.
That's great. Okay, that's totally doable.
Yes.
That's totally doable. Hey friends, popping into this episode to remind you to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. You can also sign up for my monthly newsletter for secret posts and bonus content at www.melissaduncan.com/join. Now let's get back to the show.
I hear a lot about vitamins that are hair, skin, and nails.
Yes.
And so please tell us, is this a real thing? And if so, or even if not, are there supplements that we should be taking to help our hair, skin, and nails?
So, okay, so I do a lot. So the mentor that I mentioned, where I got started with her in medical school and of course did my residency at Wake Forest, I did a lot of hair loss. And actually, that's one thing that I'm super interested in and do a lot of my research and studying on is hair loss and hair loss conditions. So I get a number of patients who come in to me on supplements, especially things like biotin and the hair, skin, and nail vitamins. And the thing about supplements are it's only helpful if nutritionally you're deficient in it. And so that's what I try to encourage my patients to understand is that works for one person may not work for someone else because their nutritional deficiencies or lack thereof may be completely different. So if someone has a nutritional deficiency and they take it, yeah, things are going to get better. But if most of us do not have a nutritional deficiency, it's probably not going to change much of the reason that you were taking it, and not all supplements are completely safe. And so I always talk about the fact that you don't want to take too many things unmonitored if you don't really know how they're impacting you. So biotin's one of those that I think we kind of just assume it's put in everything that it's 100% safe, but there's been a number of reports of biotin actually throwing off values of labs. And so for my patients, I actually, if I am going to start them on it, I recommend that they stop it before labs just so that there's no potential to have invalid lab results because of it. So I think those are the things that aren't put out to consumers, and we kind of just say, hey, yeah, take this and it's fine because it's a supplement and it's natural, whereas realistically it can have some impact that could be detrimental. So across the board, is there any particular anti-aging supplement that I think is fabulous? No, not necessarily. Like I said, I think that the most important things is protecting yourself from the sun and managing your stress appropriately and eating a good nutritious diet, because realistically you're going to absorb way more nutrients out of a whole diet than you are going to be from taking an artificial supplement.
Okay.
Some helpful things that I do, it's like fish oil. I like fish oil. I think it's anti-inflammatory. It can help hydrate skin. So, if people are looking for any particular type of supplement, I think that one's probably low risk enough that, yeah, I feel okay if people take fish oil. Majority of the time, I do let them know it can increase risk of bleeding. So always, check with a doctor prior to any types of surgeries if you're on it.
Okay.
But I think it's more for me that aspect where I don't just willy-nilly just tell people to start a supplement, because everyone's background for medical conditions is a little bit different, that there may be certain supplements that don't agree with everyone.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. And so I hear this question a lot, and I think about it too, because, being childbearing age, a lot of us take prenatal vitamins, which are very kind of all encompassing.
Yes.
It seems, in my, again, layperson eyes, is it typically advisable to add on something like a fish oil when you're already taking a prenatal?
So the
is there
prenatal,
too much of a good thing, I guess?
So prenatals, I don't have a problem with prenatal vitamins. I'd say the only thing you would need to check with a prenatal vitamin is if it has iron in it, because not everyone should be taking iron on a daily or however often you're taking your vitamin basis. I say that's probably the one component where I'm like, okay, you probably want to just ask and check with someone before you kind of started on a daily regimen if it has iron in it. The rest of the nutritional components of them is not too far off what a normal individual would be expected to take in a normal day. So I'm fine with that. Adding a fish oil, again, as long as the prenatal doesn't contain fish oil or any of the components of fish oil or omega acids, then those are usually fine and compatible to take together, bearing that all of their medical conditions are okay and compatible with you taking it. Yeah.
Check with your doctor.
Yeah, just check with your doctor. Just check with your doctor. But I'm fine with people taking a prenatal and fish oil if they wanted to and everything was otherwise normal, to see if they got any benefit from it. I don't see any problem with it. No.
Okay, so that's good. All right, and then how much water should we be drinking a day to see a difference for our
So
skin?
skin, hydrated skin is healthier skin for sure. So, for average sized person, 6 to 8 glasses of water a day is roughly what I try to tell people to get in. When you're flying through clinic and barely sitting down,
I was about to
I'm
ask,
gonna
do you
say,
do you do that?
I'm like, where did I drink anything today? Or my staff is like pushing it down my throat. They're like, Dr. Daniel, you have not sat down at all today. Here, please sit down and drink this. And I love tea. So I drink probably more tea than I should, just because I love tea and I like
Sweet
to
tea
stick.
or unsweet?
I usually don't sweeten it. I drink hot tea. I
Okay.
love hot tea
Oh,
because
hot tea.
I'm
Okay.
always cold, and so that I drink way more tea probably that has caffeine in it than I should, and should probably be drinking a little more water. But realistically, 6 to 8 glasses of water a day is probably adequate and great for most people for their skin and other organs to stay hydrated.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's talk wrinkles.
Yes.
So we have them. We don't love them.
Yes.
What should we be doing for them? And is Botox our only answer?
So so for fine lines and wrinkles, things like retinoids, so prescription strength retinoids are probably the most studied out of all the retinoids, and any of those in that class. The prescription strength are the ones that have been studied extensively for reducing wrinkles. And what I usually tell people is that it's not the deep creases that those really help, it's the fine lines and wrinkles, and then I think overall complexion and tone of the skin.
Okay.
So yes, I think that anyone who's looking for wrinkle reduction and you're at the point where you're looking for medical procedures should just go ahead and you should be on a prescription strength retinoid if you've arrived at that decision that you're going to seek medical attention for why you're going to address your. And some people are like, I don't want to use a retinoid. And that's perfectly fine. But if you're talking about, are you going to get the most bang for your buck from a medical side without a retinoid? You're going to get better results if you're on a full comprehensive program and not just doing Botox per se.
Okay.
Now, in terms of Botox, I mean, it works really well for wrinkles. So if you make those faces in the mirror and you're like, okay, yeah, I have the quote I get all the women in that says I have the 11s. I see my 11s now. So yeah, I mean, once you're getting those deep creases where you're moving muscles and you see all the fine lines from that, and you're getting the deeper wrinkles from it. We call them neuromodulators at that point, and it encompasses not just Botox, but there's a couple other ones out on the market as well. Those definitely help. They help to relax the muscles. It helps to if people are making those types of faces where they are getting those deep creases, it helps to definitely relax and smooth those out, and most women are really happy after they get it done. And I say from a safety standpoint, of course you should always go to someone who is well skilled and has had experience with using them. And granted, as long as someone is well trained and they're experienced with how to use it, the chance of complication is very, 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 very low. So I have no qualms when a lady comes in and tells me that they're finally ready, they're wanting to take that jump and do something more on the medical procedure side. I think Botox is an easy thing to start with, for sure.
Okay, so that's good. So it sounds like it's kind of low risk, high reward in terms of
if you're ready to take that plunge.
If you're
absolutely.
ready to take that plunge.
Yes,
okay.
absolutely.
Okay, and is it Botox one of those things that once you do it, you're kind of in it for, it's kind of cyclical in terms of you need to keep going back?
Yeah,
okay.
It is. So it's one of those that it lasts for about 3 months.
Okay.
And then you'll start to notice that you'll have that movement come back. And so most women who are happy with the results for it, they're going to come back and ask you, let's do it again, and they'll just get on their cycle. But does it commit you to always having to do it? No, if you get to a point where you aren't bothered as much by them, then you could always stop at any point. But if you wanted to keep up those results, yes, it lasts for about 3 months.
Okay. I think I need Botox. I have the lines across not vertical, but horizontal in the middle of my forehead.
Yeah. So, and it does and it doesn't, some people, it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to do a whole lot. I have some women that come in, they're like, I just want a little bit. And they just start with a little and we work from there, and everyone's, I think, goal for how much relaxation they want is a little bit different. So I think it's just knowing the person and exactly what type of results they're looking to achieve.
Yeah, because I think we all want to look natural. We don't want to look like
Exactly.
the
Frozen.
over-processed
Yes. Frozen
yeah,
face.
frozen face. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny. Is there any other procedure that you do a lot on 30 to 40-year-old
Yeah.
moms?
So one of my favorite procedures, I think, for I say, maturing skin. I wouldn't
Hmm.
call it mature skin. Maturing skin. I like microneedling personally.
Oh, okay.
Microneedling and chemical peels. I think that they're really low risk procedures. They're high reward. They can help with fine lines and wrinkling for sure, helping to increase and the improves skin tone and texture. So, and like I said, low risk. So that's what most people, I think, in the younger age group are looking for, is that they're happy with their skin overall. There's just a couple of problem areas they want to address, but they're not looking to change the way that they look or do
Yes.
anything that's A, crazy expensive, and B, like a high risk. So
Yeah.
those are really easy procedures to start with. And again, it doesn't put you in a category where you're having to come back at this set interval because you started it either.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. That's great. Um, all right. So when we think about the ingredients that we're getting in our products that we're
Yes.
buying, either, and I guess I'm thinking probably more over the counter
Yeah.
than medical grade. So
Oh.
if I'm, but maybe not. So
No, that's
yeah, so I guess that is concerning. But if I'm going into Target,
yes.
or I guess also going to my dermatologist here in Greensboro, what should we be avoiding and what should we be making sure is in our product? And I guess we're probably worried more about what we should be avoiding in
Yeah.
terms of ingredients in our products.
And so that's kind of okay. So that's a little bit of a funnier story of how I came and arrived at kind of where I am at this point in life. I
Mm-hmm.
actually, I don't even know how I started and stumbled across this. I think it was a patient who asked me some questions. I'm a researcher and I couldn't give her a really great answer. And so I went and looked something up, and that led me to look something else up, and then kind of ended down this rabbit hole of looking at ingredients and products and understanding what the real and legitimate risks were associated with things that I'd say layman and more common people coming into clinic, or maybe what they've heard on in an article, or people who are quote unquote crunchy, which I consider myself more of a crunchy person too, have maybe looked up or been told before. And so once I started doing all this research, I'm like, that's not such a great thing, and I definitely have recommended that before. And I started thinking about my own children, and, not necessarily starting with what I put on myself, but, here my kids were. My daughter was probably 2 at the time, and I was pregnant with my son. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, I'm not really happy with the products that I've been using on her. And long term, do we have like great statistics on potential, at the time, the two things I was looking at were parabens and phthalates. And
Mm-hmm.
there's, I think, a fair amount of literature on phthalates and some of the health concerns related to them. And so I said, I'm not so sure about that. And I kind of was like, well, what's some alternatives? And believe it or not, and this is again getting back to my once I get an idea and I just run with it, I started making soap. For my
Oh,
kids.
wow. Oh,
Yes.
my
So
goodness.
I literally I went and checked out a book and from Amazon, and I like kind of read it, and I was like, oh, this seems pretty easy. So I ordered some stuff from Amazon and I started doing soaping, and it was actually pretty fun and kind of therapeutic. So became a hobby of mine. So we just started using natural soaps after that, and so I'd make them with food grade oils in our kitchen, and then
Mm-hmm.
of course you have to add lye to them, which is considered a chemical, but from a safety standpoint, I knew exactly what was in it.
Yeah.
And my daughter had some mild eczema at the time. So it was also, oh, okay, well, I can also know exactly what we're putting on her skin. And I think that's kind of where I started with what are our safety standards for product regulation, and then have those been tested and vetted. Because I think that in my residency and just in training overall as a dermatologist, I don't think that piece is stressed as much. I think we talk
Mm-hmm.
about a lot about contact allergens, but we don't talk a lot about the health effects of potential environmental chemicals.
Yeah.
And then at different stages of our life, are they impactful at all? And so I still think that for myself, I'm still probably at the beginning of the research for it. I try to learn more and more about it every single day. I think the big blanket of chemicals that I'm particularly interested in are endocrine disruptors and what fits in that category. And then not, there's lots of things that I think could be considered endocrine disruptors, but do we have clinical science or do we have actual research that shows yay or nay, are these things impactful or are they okay? And at what concentration? Because of course, everything is about concentration and how much of it is safe and how, if you go over that amount, what could be potential problems. And I think the closest one to home right now has been sunscreen. So I'm a huge advocate of sunscreens. People ask me this all the time. Do you still support sunscreen? Absolutely. 100% I support sunscreen. I've seen the effects of people who do not use sunscreen and multiple skin cancers that they have. But how do we advise people that we to use sunscreen in the as safe as possible manner? And so I think that study that came out that showed that we are absorbing some of the chemical sunscreens at higher concentrations than were believed, to me was important. Does it mean anything in terms of can we draw any major conclusions? No, we can't really draw conclusions, but I think we can say that maybe our initial thoughts on what levels we were actually being exposed to was probably a little bit wrong. I don't think we thought that it was going to be as high as what they came out to be. And so now the question is, okay, well, we have this information that it's probably a bit higher than we thought. What does that mean? Is there any impact physiologically? And then it doesn't matter with someone who's 40 versus someone who's 5. And so that's been a lot of the questioning that I've had within myself and trying to get with companies that support research into answering some of those critical questions for us.
Okay. So do you think that we'll be seeing some answers?
I think that, like I said, I think that there's a lot of companies that are supporting missions that are trying to invest in science related to it. I don't, I think that it's going to take time and it's going to take a lot of research dollars. So how quickly are we going to have a lot of those questions answered? I'm not sure. I think that we just have to be smart as we can. I think the data that we have on some particular things, like, I think phthalates are a big one. So I choose not to buy products that have phthalates in them for myself or my children. I usually recommend for my patients, especially, some of the ones that I see who are young and other always already have other skin issues. If a parent asks me specifically, I usually tell them, I would avoid the ones that have the phthalates in them. There's a couple of other ingredients, but I think, just understanding what's in there and what environmental, not just personal impact that it can have on your health, but what environmental impact does it have as well? Because we're here for our lifetime, but we also want to leave our kids with the world a little bit better than we found it. So even if it doesn't personally affect us, does it affect the environment, which indirectly affects all of us and our offspring at some point?
Absolutely.
Is really, really important.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's very helpful because I feel like I live in a little ignorant bubble and I just buy things and I don't really look at the ingredient list. So, and I see some some shampoos and some other things that are labeled, like phthalate free or sulfate free. And, but I just never really know if that's what I should be doing. So that's good.
Well, and like I said, the science isn't settled by any stretch of the imagination. I think we can only do, as much research as we can on things that we have seen or have some evidence may be important from a health and safety standard. And then, you support it and you buy other stuff, then that's fine. If I'm out and about and I have soap that I don't know where the ingredients are, I'm going to use it. But if I'm going to choose to buy something, then it's going to be something that I feel like I can fully support. And great. Like I said, not just for myself, but for the environment as well.
Yes. We need to leave a good little
exactly.
a good world for our little people.
We do.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, this has been so helpful. So as we start to wrap up, I have a question that I love to ask moms who are on the show. So what would you say as you are navigating work and motherhood and making sure that you're giving your kids good products, all of these things? What would you say is your favorite mom hack? So how do you make life easier on your family or at least on yourself in those crazy weeks?
Oh, let's see. I think I was going to say is everything's been so crazy recently. Let me think about that. I think the best bit of advice I've had most recently, just because I do have so many things going on, is, you know, you can't be everything to everyone.
Yes. Oh, that's
And
so good.
so, I've been doing better with saying no to things that don't immediately bring me happiness or enhance my life at the
Yeah.
moment. And
Oh,
I
that's
think
good.
that's been probably the quintessential best advice that I've been given recently, just because I'm one of those that I just want to do everything for everyone.
Yeah.
And I want to be everything for everyone, and understanding that, sometimes being a little more selfish with my time is not such a bad thing,
Yeah.
because indirectly my family does better. My kids have a little more piece of me. And I'm better at giving and sharing everything that I love, because I'm a happier individual too. So I think that's probably, I don't know if it's a hack, but probably the best bit of advice I can
No,
give.
I think that's great. I heard, I can't remember who the original source of this quote was, but I heard if it's not a heck yes, although they used a different word.
Exactly.
If it's not a heck yes, then it's a heck no.
Exactly.
And so, if you don't feel like, yes, I would jump right into that,
Exactly.
then it should be a no.
It should be a no.
I think that's a kind of an interesting way to approach, the questions that get asked of us as moms.
And it's hard, because I think when you're that type of person where, like, your whole life you're the first person to volunteer for everything, it's not natural for me to say, oh no, I can't do that right now.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do that. So it's really uncomfortable, but I've seen how it's enhanced our lives just a bit by being a little less available.
Yeah.
So, I think that's been my best bit of advice most recently, for sure.
Yeah, that's really good. So last question, especially as we wrap up the year 2019 and we're kind of here in the fourth quarter.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
It's like, is it almost Christmas? Oh my gosh.
It's hard. It's so hard to believe. But what goals do you have for yourself as we wrap up 2019 and head into 2020?
So I think, I was actually just talking with my staff about where I want to go with all of this, because, like I said, it was kind of a whirlwind of starting this practice, and my why for doing it. And really it's just, I think my goals personally would be, how do I take what I've done and make it better? So, of course, patient care, making patients' experiences and the relationships that I form with them super meaningful. But then, how do I take this beyond just a one-on-one relationship as a patient? Because I feel like that's probably the most limiting part of medicine. There's so much information to be shared and so little time with a one-on-one contact to do it. How do I do this on a larger scale, and how do I make it more of a movement of people wanting education for themselves, and not necessarily seeking answers as to making them better, but understanding what brings about health. So how do I make this more of a community-wide and focused thing? And so that's my question for myself, of how exactly I'm going to do that. And so we'll have to stay tuned.
Yes, we will. That's exciting.
I don't know. We'll see. I don't know.
Well, I think you have so much information that is so valuable. So I think whatever direction you start to take this, I'm sure it will be a good one. So I love all that you're doing, and that your passion is in combining not only just the medical advice in terms of skincare, but overall wellness for women. Because I think it's easy for us to kind of forget that we need to drink our water, and we need to go to sleep early.
Well, and I think the one thing people, I even myself didn't realize about dermatology is most diseases or conditions have some skin manifestation. And so, the things that I end up picking up from just doing a skin exam can be, life-changing for people. So understanding that sometimes I'm that first glimpse into it, I think the wellness piece is really needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. So tell everybody where they can find you and your practice online and then in Charlotte.
Yeah, so Remedy Skin, Hair, and Wellness. We are located in the Ballantyne Waverly area off of Tom Short Road in Argy-Kell. And then you can find us online at www.remedyskinandhair.com. And you can visit us there.
Great. Excellent. And y'all have an Instagram account too, is that right?
The Instagram tag is remedy.skin.hair.wellness.
Perfect. All right. And I'll link all of that in the show notes for those who are driving in the car so that they can find it when they get stopped and can follow along and hopefully can come see you, those who are in the Charlotte area. So thank you again, Alyssa. This has been so helpful and so much fun.
And thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And we will go drink our water and go to bed.
Yay! Sleep. Yes,
and wash
we
our
need
face.
it. Wash our face and sleep. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
I'm so thankful for the moms who share their stories on here on the show and in our fun Instagram community. I'd love for you to connect with me online at Influential Motherhood on Instagram and Facebook to continue the conversation or just say hello. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star rating and a written review in the Apple Podcast app. It's how you can help get the show in front of moms looking for episodes just like this one. I hope you'll find a way to influence your work or community for good this week. Don't forget, you can listen to other episodes or learn more about the show at www.influentialmotherhood.com. See you next week.